there has been a growing number of African Americans who have relocated to Kenya. And as a Kenyan, I am asking myself why. What is so good about Kenya that some of these African Americans would choose Kenya over West Africa? Because we can date the African American ancestry back to West Africa during the transatlantic trade. We had Africans who migrated to the Americas as slaves working in the sugar plantations. So why East Africa, why Kenya, yet most of them can't date back their roots there? And one of the things that came to mind was that it's not about money. Not about money. It has to be something else. If it's about money, then it's about the investments that they have here in Kenya. But why choose to relocate? Why choose Kenya? Why choose to reside in a different country that is different from your ancestry? Or rather, there's a high probability that it's different from your roots. And one of the many things that came up is infrastructure. Yes, most of the African Americans are preferring Kenya to other African countries in East Africa, in West Africa, because we have better infrastructure. But wait a minute. As a Kenyan, you might ask yourself, which infrastructure are we talking about? Which roads are we talking about? So first, let's understand where most of these African Americans are choosing to reside in Kenya. And some of the neighborhoods are Kilimani, Lavington, Karen, Runda, Westlands, and some coastal areas like Malindi. Of course, there are others, but you can see that these are posh neighborhoods. Allow me to say that. These are neighborhoods that don't have an issue with infrastructure. So when you're saying roads, they definitely have better roads than the roads that we have in Nyeri, in other parts of the country. Let's say Mlolongo, Kitengela, you get what I mean. These areas have better infrastructure, have better amenities, and they're in the suburbs. There's proximity to the Nairobi city. So this is the ideal destination. And when we say that, yes, they have better infrastructure, it's true. It's true. I was having a conversation with someone who got a chance to go to West Africa, to Togo, Benin, Ivory Coast. And when he came back, he told me, or he told us, who were in that group, that Kenya, we are better off. We are better off in terms of infrastructure, because even the airports that they have, you can't compare that to our airport. Now, that was a while back. I don't know how these airports look like, but from somebody who has had an experience of being in Kenya and going there and getting to notice these things, and also in terms of the cities that we have, at least we have skyscrapers. At least we have them. At least we have a robust metropolitan city, which when you compare that to other African countries, we are better off. We are better off. When we are doing this comparison, we are not comparing Kenya to first world countries like the US or Germany, because of course we will fall short of that. So we are comparing Kenya to other African countries, region like Sudan, Rwanda, Uganda, and we're also comparing ourselves to other West African countries like Nigeria. And so we are still better off in as much as we demand better relative to our neighbors, not relative to first world countries and second world countries. The other thing that came up is that we have affordable, quality standard of living. Again, remember, what neighborhoods am I talking about? I'm talking about Kilimani. I'm talking about Runda. I'm talking about Lavington. So when you compare that to other African countries, we are better off. We are better off. I was watching a video from one of the African Americans who had located to Uganda, and he was talking about how if he had a chance to redo the decision that he made, he would consider coming to Kenya over going to Uganda because of how affordable it is. Now, affordable is relative. Affordable is relative because now we are comparing how much you are paying in the US, for example, or let's say you are a British African, how much you're paying in Britain to what you're paying here in Kenya. I was looking up rent for a one-bedroom apartment in the US, and on average, it's around 1,600 USD. It can go to as high as 7,000 USD depending on the city that you live in. For example, there are expensive cities like New York. Now, think about what 1,600 USD can get you here in Kenya. So he was talking about how the apartments here in Kenya give you access to the gym, give you access to a swimming pool, which when you compare that to Uganda and also other countries, we are giving them a better deal. And also in terms of them paying the rent abroad and coming to Kenya. For example, remember when I told you that for them it's not an income problem. It's not an income problem because for some of them they are digital nomads. They can work from wherever they want to. So they get paid in USD, but they come and spend it here in Kenya in Kenyan shillings. Or think about it this way. Let's assume that you're a Kenyan. This is a real life scenario because there are people who work for companies that are abroad. They get paid in USD, but they still live in Kenya, right? So you're working from home. If you had that opportunity where you get paid in USD, for example, you're paid 6,000 USD or even 4,000 USD or even 2,000 USD, and you live here in Kenya, it's cheaper. It's cheaper because the cost of living here in Kenya is relatively cheaper. Now, with regard to that, there's something else that you might overlook that outsiders find attractive about Kenya, which is we have better quality internet connection. Yes, we do. I had a conversation with a Kenyan who lives in Germany, and he was telling me that the internet connection here in Kenya is better than in Germany. I don't know if that is true. If it's true, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments if you live in Germany. But with all honesty, internet connection is important. In fact, better, high quality internet connection is good for an economy. Even think about Kenya becoming one of those tech savvy countries in Africa. We have tech innovations here in Africa, and even something that you might easily overlook, like doing digital payments, you using M-Pesa to make payments. That is a bonus. That is a bonus because for an outsider, they can easily track how their money is flowing. They can easily make payments. They can easily do that, which we as Kenyans might easily take advantage of. We don't see that as a bonus. But we have African countries that are not digitized as much as we are. We are a tech-savvy nation, and internet plays an important role in that. This other reason, you might not believe it, but it's true. We have peace and stability in Kenya. Yes, we have issues in terms of insecurity. We still have issues in terms of political instability, like the climate is not that nice, but relative to our neighbors, we are doing better off. Think about these other countries that are politically unstable. Think about Somalia. Think about Sudan. When you compare that to Kenya, like for us, the issues that we have, they are just a drop in the ocean. I was even having a conversation with a lady, an Ethiopian lady. She came here to Kenya to visit her friend, and we were having a conversation, and she was telling me that the reason why Kenya is a good place, in as much as she's been here only for 2 days, is that there is that climate of stability. Like there's not much tension as there is in Ethiopia. For example, she told me that in Ethiopia, there are those groups that are constantly trying to take over the government. Yes, they haven't managed to do that, but there's that. And as an Ethiopian, there's that fear. Yes, you've not seen it, but you have to be cautious all the time, which is not the case here in Kenya. I'm not downplaying the fact that we still have insecurity issues, we still have corruption issues. All those issues are there. It's just that the extent to which they are in Kenya cannot be compared to what is out there in other African countries. The other reason why this is the best destination for somebody who wants to relocate, it's because of the vibrant culture that we have, the urban life that we embrace, the music, the dance, the arts, and the culture. Back to that Ethiopian friend, if I may call her that, she was telling me that Kenya is just amazing because even where we met, where we were having this conversation, it was at a nice place where people were gathering, listening to music, enjoying, eating, dancing. And she was telling me that, again, due to that political climate issue that they have, in their country, they lost it. But here in Kenya, we have it. And we can even attribute that to social media. The YouTube influencers, the Instagram influencers, the vloggers, the bloggers who write about their travel to Masai Mara and how they discovered this gem in Turkana and how they went partying in Naivasha. They found this vibrant community that is welcoming. So that plays an important role when someone is considering to relocate, because you'd want to associate yourself with a similar culture. You want to associate yourself with a country or with people who are documenting positive experiences. So this is definitely one of the reasons why not just African Americans, but Americans or outsiders, Europeans, would want to buy that piece of property in Malindi so that they can enjoy the warm sandy beaches, which actually gives us an advantage because we have countries that are landlocked. For example, Uganda. The other reason is because we are warm and welcoming. Yes, as Kenyans, we love foreigners, we appreciate them, we love them, we accept them. Also considering the fact that these are African Americans, they have our skin tone. It's far much easier for us to integrate with them because we can easily confuse them for Kamau, we can easily confuse them for Onyango, we can easily confuse them for Wafula, other than the accent that might give that away. But all in all, we love foreigners. We love them. Now think about it this way. We have other countries, to be specific, the North African countries that are doing better economically speaking. Tunisia, Morocco, Egypt, those countries, they're doing better off. But why would an African American not want to go there if it's really about going or relocating to a country that is doing better economically? And it's because most of those countries that are in the northern region are of Arabian descent. So if you are a dark-skinned brother or a dark-skinned sister, it would make sense for you to come to a country like Kenya, Uganda, where there's that Bantu origin that makes you easily acceptable, where we have shared similarities like our skin tone. It's just the reality. It's easier for them to be accepted here in Kenya than to be accepted in the northern region. And it's also easier for someone who has the Arabian origin to be accepted easily in the northern part of Africa, in Morocco, in Tunisia, than to be accepted here in Kenya. Although that is subject to discussion, but I think you get my point. It's just easier. If I go to the UK and I spot a Kenyan there with my skin, it will be easier for me to open up. It's going to be easier for me to communicate and relate with them. So that's the same thing, that they'll choose Africa or Kenya, to be specific. As you can see, it's not just one thing. It's many things that come into play. And of course, as a Kenyan, you might ask yourself, which good infrastructure, which good education system? Because if you're relocating to Kenya, you want your children to have better education. We don't have good education here in Kenya. You might argue that we don't have the top-notch, best healthcare systems. You can even argue that we are not that safe. We still have insecurity issues. But if you compare Kenya to other African countries, we are better off. Of course, we demand better, but that is just something to take pride of. As a Kenyan, do you think that Kenya is an ideal place for a foreigner to live in, for an African American to live in? Or do you think that we need to do better? I'd love to know your thoughts on the comments.